Hey guys, time for the second step in the three steps that we use to decode every ACT science question. So as you learn, the first step is you're not going to read the question. You're actually not going to read the passage. You're going to skip to the questions. You're going to scan the question. Don't read it. Scan it for the map phrase. Based on results, based on the information of the passage, based on study or experiment, those ones are there's a little bit of code to them. Memorize exactly what they mean. Now, if the map phrase takes you to a table or graph, that is what step 2 is about. If the map phrase takes you to a table or graph, that is what step 2 is about. So if it said based on the results, you know it's going to take you to a table or graph. Or if it says based on study or experiment, and within that study or experiment has a table or graph, okay, now you're going to use this step 2. Step 2, we call it tank T. What tank T is an acronym to help you go through all the key information in a table or graph, and it's just going to get you very well situated in the question to start understanding the experiment and what's happening, the key dynamics and trends, etc. Running through tank T will really help you understand what's happening. And you'll see, when you're not using these steps super crisply and clearly every time, you're going to get way more wrong answers than when you have just drilled it down to, no pun intended, a science. When you're just nailing these steps in every question, you're going to be so accurate in your answers. So here it is, step 2, tank T. So these are common elements of a graph or table that you need to run through. The first T, as you can maybe guess, stands for title information. So by that, what we mean is every graph or table is going to have kind of title information. They actually don't have titles, but they have something like a title. That's why we call it title information, which is something that basically just summarizes what this graph or table is about. And so, let's say we've got figure 1 right here. Obviously, this figure has no title, but the title information is kind of like right here. It says this procedure is repeated using water samples at 40 and 50 degrees Celsius. See figure 1. And figure 2 below, the title information line is kind of like right here. This procedure was repeated using air samples at 30 and 40 degrees. That's just like a little line in the text. It sort of summarizes what's in this table or figure. Other ones usually have even clearer title information. That one wasn't great. Let's see what we can show you here. So for table 1 here, let's look for the title information. Usually it's in the line of text, like right above the graph or table. So it says the iodine and Benedict's test were then each done with 2 milliliter samples drawn from each tube. See table 1 for like the results. It's kind of a line of text like this. It just kind of gives you a basic intro to what is in this figure or table. Here's a classic one right here. For figure 1 here, it says, the line right above, the results of 3 sets of experiments are shown in figures 1 and 3. That is title information, kind of a rough summary of what's in this table or graph. So your first step when doing tank T is to look for that title information. And it's usually going to be a little line of text right above the graph or table. Sometimes it's like 3 lines above, whatever. Go in that text right above the graph or table and find that line which kind of just says roughly what is in this figure or table. It's kind of that's the title information. So tank T, first T is title information. And just go find it and read it. Now the next A, as you can maybe guess, are axes. You are going to check the axes on the graph. If it's a table, you're just looking for the headings of the rows or the columns. That's how we do the axes step. Now, when you do the axes step, what you want to look up is, we call it WURI. Is for each axis, you're going to look up WURI. So the W stands for what's being measured. Is it feet, is it inches, is it mLs per second, whatever it is. What's being measured? And then you're going to check in what units. So is it in meters? Wait, the what's being measured, sorry, it could be, corn produced per year or people living in a city, whatever it is. And then the units is like, mLs per second or meters per second or grams, whatever it is. So on the axis, you're going to check what are they measuring, in what units. Across what range? You'd think every range on a graph starts at 0. They don't always. It might go from 30 to 110 or from 172 to 181. You just want to check the range. If you just assume it starts at 0, you can get some questions wrong. Also, some questions you're comparing two graphs, and if you're just assuming that both graphs have the exact same range, you'll often find they don't, and that's how you could get a question wrong. So, what's being measured? In what units? Across what range? In what increments? Increments on a graph, you would think would be regular, like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Sometimes they're irregular. Sometimes it's like 2, 6, and then 11, and then 17. Or sometimes it goes up exponentially. It's like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. So just check it. And just checking the increments and the range will help situate you in understanding the data better. So let's just try that. I'm going to show you what it's like to do WURI on an axis. So as we look at figure 1 here, after we find the title information above, we're going to look at this y-axis here. And it looks like we've got temperature registered by the thermometer. That's what's being measured in what units, degrees Celsius, across what range, from 0 to 50, in what increments, increments of 10. And as you're doing all this in your head, you're doing it even quicker, obviously. On the x-axis, what's being measured? Time, in what units, seconds, across what range, 0 to 10, in what increments, 1. So you just run through all that. And you're going to understand what's happening in this graph way better after you go through Tank T. By the way, if you're taking the SAT, Tank T is a great series of steps to review any graph or table on the SAT. You will understand the question better and be more likely to get it correct when you use Tank T on SAT graphs, which show up in the math, the reading, and the grammar sections. Strangely, they throw graphs into the grammar sections. It's a little strange. Okay, Tank T. So first we look for the title information. Then we look up the axes. Then look if there's any note, just anything with an asterisk. You don't need to read this little thing like what journal this came from. That is not the note. The note is if there is like this right here at the bottom. The note is if there is an asterisk. You want to make sure you read that. That's the note on this table. So we've got title information, axes, where you look for what's being measured in what units, across what range, in what increments, and then we get to the note. And then the next one to check, the K is key, as one of my students once put it. The way you do this step is you look at the damn key. So if we look at the key here, we got that figure 2. Okay, it's these different temperatures for 40, 30, and 20 degrees Celsius, and you kind of see which mark represents each temperature. So key, look at the damn key. And then the last step in Tank T is trends. So you just want to notice as you look across the table, or you look across a graph, you want to notice are things going up or down? Are they going up linearly or exponentially? Or are there no trends? That's also important to notice. So anytime you get a table or graph, you want to run through Tank T. And just as you go through the steps, you're going to be understanding this question better and better. And the third step, which we'll show you next, is how to actually read the question. Once you have done step 1, scanning for the map phrase, and done step 2, if it took you to the table or graph, run through Tank T on the table or graph. One thing I can add real quick is you'll notice in this passage right here, a bunch of the questions all mention table 1. The first time you encounter table 1 as a map phrase in the question, you're going to go through Tank T on it. But if subsequent questions ask about this table and you've already done Tank T on an earlier question, you don't have to do Tank T again. All right, happy Tank T'ing. That is step 2 of ACT Science, and we will get to step 3 next.